Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us tonight are Heather Dewar of the Daily Mail and ESPN senior writer Mark Ogden. Evening to you both. Let's quickly run you through the back pages. Starting with the front of the Telegraph, which leads with an image of James Anderson. As we've been reporting, he's preparing to end his glorious England career this summer. They also carry Mauricio Pochettino casting doubt on his Chelsea future. The Times also goes big on Anderson, and they quote Erik ten Hag saying he thinks Ineos are too smart to sack him if he wins the FA Cup final in 2 weeks' time. In the back of the Mirror, United are there as Dwight Yorke says he wouldn't want to play in a team as bad as the current crop at Old Trafford. Star has a look at another big weekend in the title race with Manchester City in focus and the story that their opponents Fulham have been flying kites at the training ground this week on their back page. Right, let's start in the Telegraph then and start with Jimmy Anderson, one of the greatest ever, Heather, and it looks like he's had a little tap on the shoulder and now's the time to go. What do you make of this story?
I think it's quite interesting, actually, because Brendan McCullum apparently flew in from New Zealand to have a discussion. Apparently, they discussed this over a nice game of golf, as you do in these scenarios sometimes, and basically told him that he wasn't likely to be part of the squad for the Ashes. So I'm kind of on two minds on this. I kind of think on the one side, is it good for Jimmy Anderson that this has been released now? So we've kind of got the build-up in our minds that this kind of superstar of English cricket is potentially on the way out, so that we, as cricket fans and Jimmy and the England team and all of his colleagues can kind of prepare for that moment. The other side is, well, is it the way that James Anderson would have wanted to go out, and would he have wanted to maybe have announced his retirement, if that is indeed what's going to happen? It sounds like it is, but would he have wanted to do it off his own back? So I'm kind of in two minds about this one. But I mean, if it is his swan song, you would imagine that he'll go out at Old Trafford against Sri Lanka. No part moving forward after that. And what a superstar he's been. He's an incredible player. He's got so much guile, entertainment in his style of play. I don't think it would be ridiculous to say that he's probably going to be seen as one of the best cricketers of all time when it comes to bowling. I mean, 700 wickets, most of any fast bowler, third in bowlers of all time. So 187 tests. I mean, it is an incredible run that he's had. And if he's to go out soon, then I think people will be going out there and giving him a huge round of applause.
Yeah, Mark, I mean, his great mate Stuart Broad called time on his career at the end of last summer. He kind of went out perfectly, taking the wicket that wrapped up an Ashes Test match and drew a series, and went out very much on his own terms. This seems slightly different. What have you made of it?
Maybe, but maybe there's an understanding there as well. I mean, we have to remember that he made his debut in 2003, so 21 years at the highest level of any elite sport is an amazing achievement, and to do it at that level of cricket is just something beyond as well. So, he's 42 in July. He's probably surpassed all expectations in terms of longevity. I think only Muralitharan and Shane Warne have taken more Test wickets. So I think the time to go out is when you can still do it. And I think Jimmy Anderson can still do it. Could he still do it in 6 months, 12 months' time? Who knows? I mean, once you get beyond your 40s in elite sport, it's hard to maintain that level. So I think we don't know if Brendan McCullum has told him he's retiring or whether they've had a conversation, they've agreed that he will retire this year. But I think it's the right time. I think at that age, at 42, I think that is an amazing run. I think it is time to look to the future, because at that age, like I say, you can't plan to be around in the future for too much longer in terms of the next 2, 3, 4 years. So I think it makes sense. And I'm sure that the English sporting, public would be determined to see him off in that way, to fill the stadiums and to make sure that wherever he plays this summer, he gets a good farewell.
Yeah, Heather, you mentioned the fact that England play at Old Trafford. It's Jimmy Anderson's home ground. He's got an end named after him. Sport, though, is notoriously unsentimental at times. He's still, that's some way off. That's August. He's still got to play well enough to get in that Test team. And if he doesn't play well enough, are England going to kind of call him up for that Test match just because it is his swan song? Or are they going to be more ruthless than that?
I do think that's a good point, actually, to be fair. But I think given who he is and given his history with England and Old Trafford, I think that he'll be given a place no matter what. I mean, we look at, for instance, Andy Murray, and whatever happens with Andy Murray, we talk about where would be his best place to go for his swan song when he chooses the right time for him to retire. And that, one would imagine, would be at Wimbledon. So, would he, even if he wasn't being given a wild card, would he be given a wild card, for example, just to have that situation that he could be given his right farewell? So, yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe I'm sceptical, but I think he would be given a place.
OK, so from Old Trafford cricket ground to Old Trafford's football ground, and who better to speak to than Mark on this? It seems every time you're on, Mark, you're speaking about Manchester United. But if we look at the Times, the front of the Times, Ineos are too smart to fire me if I win the FA Cup. I mean, that's a massive if, given who they're playing. But what do you make of this? He's almost, he's tempting fate, perhaps.
Yeah, I think he's talking a good game. He just needs to manage one there, doesn't he? I think the situation with Ten Hag is that, Ineos are probably too smart to dismiss him before the cup final, because United have got 3 league games left. They've got the FA Cup final. It would be a very bold and very risky decision to sack him now, because there's nobody at Old Trafford to take over. But I think Ten Hag is just trying to make the case for himself to stay. I think, you can't really deny him that opportunity. But they're 8th in the Premier League. They've had a terrible season, knocked out of the Champions League in the group stage. So many injuries, which he references every week, which, quite rightly too. He's missed a lot of big players, but is that all misfortune, or is that down to his team selection, his training, his demands on his players? We don't know this, but for me, it just seems a bit of a one-way street with Ten Hag, that he's finding fault every week in certain different things, but he's very rarely pinning it on himself or accepting the responsibility for the tactics, for the selections, for why certain players aren't performing, why he's falling out with other players. We look at Jadon Sancho, who is now ripping up at Borussia Dortmund, playing in the Champions League final. So I think Ten Hag has got a lot of reasons to look himself in the mirror and think, I could have done better there. And I think Ineos have been there long enough now to realise that the manager they have probably isn't the guy that can take them forward. But right now, I think everyone at Old Trafford is having to say the right thing just to get over the line. And once the cup final's out of the way, then I think we'll see decisions being made. But ultimately, I think Ineos as well, if they let him take the cup final and United lose, or if United win, great for United. But if they lose, he goes down with a ship in many ways. I think that's the way to do it. Let him own that end to a bad season. So I don't think it's too wise at this stage to say that Ineos have made the mind up that he'll stay. I think there's a lot to be decided yet, and I'm not sure it'll work out in Ten Hag's favour.
Yeah, of course, what doesn't always help a manager is when former players start wading in and sticking the knife in, Heather. The latest to do this is Dwight York. This is in the back of the Mirror. Reds in a Dwight mess. York, I wouldn't want to play in a team this bad. That's pretty scathing. Decent headline.
It is a decent headline indeed. I mean, I wonder how many, if you're asking how many former players would want to play in that team, I wonder what they would say, and they'd probably say something quite similar. I mean, as we just heard there from Mark, I mean, it has been a pretty disastrous season for them. The way that they've played, I don't think all the blame can be put on Ten Hag. I think that the players have to take some of the blame as well for their performances. I mean, that drubbing against Crystal Palace was a complete embarrassment. So you cannot blame Ten Hag for all of that. So York, might have a point in terms of where they are in the league. Maybe the way that the team has been playing, maybe the manager, but ultimately the players themselves have to take some kind of responsibility. And it is a different Manchester United now. So we've now got new owners. So it'll be really interesting to see where they go. And just referencing that the pass points, I think it's quite interesting actually the way that Ten Hag is almost kind of putting the pressure on Ratcliffe and those at the top, to see where they will stand. I mean, at the end of the day, I would imagine most football clubs, most people at the top have already had those kind of conversations. So they will have a very good idea of where they want to go. I don't think the recent performances have really helped Ten Hag's case at all. I don't think there's really any point in getting rid of him before the end of the FA Cup final. So what happens in that interim period is really key, and it's interesting to see who they've brought in at top, at top level, Wilcox and Ashworth. So they're building that kind of structure at the very top. So they've got people in place who can direct from the top downwards, and to me, that looks like they are building a whole new team where maybe they'll bring in someone who is more of their ilk, who's maybe a bit more kind of malleable, if I can put it that way. What kind of manager that will be if Ten Hag goes is the question. And maybe it will be someone who they want to work with a little bit more closely, and it's crucially a manager of their choosing.
Mark, an argument I heard, which I thought was quite compelling the other day on the radio, was that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Dave Brailsford and the powers that be will want their first appointment to be a success. And for that to happen, they've got to do a lot more stuff behind the scenes. So actually, if they were to sack Ten Hag after the FA Cup final and bring a new man in, there's no guarantee that their first appointment would be a success. They might therefore stick with Ten Hag until they've got the other pieces of the jigsaw lined up. Yeah,
I mean, and those pieces of the jigsaw beginning to fall into place. We know that Omar Barada's starting as chief exec in the summer. We know that he's got a date now. It's basically just waiting for Dan Ashworth to be given the clearance to join from Newcastle. But I'm pretty sure the conversations have already taken place. That Ineos have been in charge since February. We know that United have got a long-standing interest in Gareth Southgate. We spoke about Southgate on this show a lot in recent weeks and months. So the issue with Southgate is that there's a major tournament this summer which doesn't end until the middle of July, and I think United would probably want a new manager in before then. But if they believe he's the right man, they would wait for him and they'd wait for the moment. I don't think they will risk keeping Ten Hag in place because it's the least worst option. I think if they know he's not working, it's not succeeding, they'll make a decision and they'll find a way. Because, like I said, I think 3/4 of the jigsaw's in place now behind the scenes. So I don't think they're going into this summer blind. I think they know already by now what is going to happen. It's just a case of getting the right guy in and making the timescale work, whoever it is.
OK, let's move on to Maurizio Pochettino then, who features in the back of the Mirror. Heather, it says here, Poch, I could be the one who decides it's time to go, suggesting that perhaps not all is rosy at Stamford Bridge from his perspective.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's quite interesting when managers come out and are quite vocal. He's done it in a more subtle way than maybe we've heard other managers doing it in the past. But clearly making demands there to say, look, if you're going to have discussions as a board, I want to be part of those discussions in the summer so we can look at, potential signings together. He's stamping his authority on his role, isn't he? Obviously, there are issues there. He would clearly like to be higher up in the league to where they are now. They've got a decent run in, I would imagine, I would say, to the end of the season. Where they finish obviously could be crucial for them in terms of European places. But I do think actually it's him coming out now and basically saying, look, if I go, I go. No great shakes, essentially. It is pretty key because the board have to now sit up and take notice of that and realise that actually, potentially if they want to keep Pochettino moving forward, then they are going to have to work with him maybe a little bit more closely.
Has he started to turn things around, Mark? Poch at Chelsea, because they were very good the other day against West Ham, and just some signs that they're getting the crowd back on side. Really good performances at home, if not on the road.
I think he's done well, actually, considering what he walked into. They finished 12th last season. Loads of change in terms of manager, in terms of ownership, in terms of players. I think at the start of this season, if Chelsea's owners had any greater expectations than what they've got right now, a cup final appearance, chance of playing in Europe, that would have been naive. I think they were never going to get in the top four. So I think if he gets some top six, having got to a cup final and started to get some performances out of players and some structure, I think he deserves to say. And I think quite rightly, Pochettino is saying to them, I've done a good job. So either back me or I'll go.
You're watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to Heather Dewar, the Daily Mail, and ESPN's senior writer, Mark Ogden. And we're going to focus on the title race, starting with the Telegraph. Obviously, Mark, Arsenal at Old Trafford on Sunday. This used to be such a needly game, didn't it? And you'd look at this and think, crikey, this is a tough game for Arsenal. I mean, they did, to be fair, Manchester United, a bit of a job on Liverpool. But can you see this being a tricky one for Mikel Arteta's side?
Well, Arsenal have a terrible record at Old Trafford in recent years. I mean, certainly, I think it's one win in about 13, 14 visits. But the situation at United right now with the injuries that they've got, I think that Arsenal will go there feeling confident they can get a result. But as you said, United have beaten Liverpool there recently, and they've got this ability on a big game, especially after a bad result, to bounce back and make a point. So I wouldn't rule that out. But because United have got so many injuries, certainly at the back, it's going to be hard for them to get a result this weekend. But it's not the game it was. I mean, it's probably 20 years now since it was a game that actually affected the title race. But I do think there's still a rivalry there, and United won't want to give it Arsenal on a plate. Obviously, if they beat Arsenal, it helps Man City. But I don't think teams work like that. I just think United have got enough on their plate to prove that, yes, they are a team that should be taken seriously, a club that should be taken seriously, and they need to get a result against Arsenal just to calm the fraying nerves and banish the clouds from Old Trafford. But I don't think one win will do that, but it'll help.
OK, well, of course, before all that, Heather, Manchester City faced Fulham in the lunchtime kickoff. The back of the Star says, title's not gone with the wind. Arteta has faith in kite-flying cottages. This reference to some of Fulham's players flying kites. Not your usual kind of training session. Perhaps suggests they're a little bit on the beach. They haven't got much to play for. Mikel Arteta will hope professional pride will win the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Was hoping that Fulham obviously will come trumps in that one. But yeah, it's interesting. I did quite like the images that were going around of the players flying kites there. But the inference being here that actually, teamwork plays a big part in these matches, and you never know what can happen, and things might, turn around. But I think obviously the game ahead, there's it'll be an interesting one indeed. But in terms of that the teamwork aspect, I think is exactly what he's having a go here at. And whether Manchester City can do the business, I think is on paper I would say things are pretty much going to go in their favour, but who knows?
Yeah, they've got a pretty decent track record at this time of year, Mark. But the back of the Sun, turf at the top, Guardiola's fears over long and dry grass at Craven Cottage. This kind of dry pitch, I think he mentioned at the City ground that the pitch was a little bit dry. Is this what teams are doing these days when they play against Manchester City? The pitch a leveller, make it bumpy, make it dry?
Well, if they are, they're well within the rights to do it. It's their pitch, and ultimately these pitches nowadays are so good that they're not like pitches even 10 years ago where you'd have at this stage of the season you'd have bare patches, or if it rained you'd have maybe mud patches. These pitches are pristine, and if they're a little bit long and they're a little bit dry, does it really affect Man City? They're probably the greatest team the Premier League's ever seen. I'm pretty sure that their players can pass the ball around quite easily on a dry pitch, or a pitch that's maybe a millimetre longer than it should be. I mean, it's ridiculous. I think Man City and Pep Guardiola have been an amazing team together over the last 5 or 6 years. I don't think the length of grass is going to stop them winning at Fulham on Saturday. OK, just from you, Mark, first of all, do you think either Fulham or Tottenham are going to be able to help Arsenal out? Really quickly on this one, because I want to move on to Mbappe, but just do you think anyone could do a job on Man City? I don't think so, no. Sorry, Arsenal fans, but I think City are going to win the next 3 games, and unfortunately that's going to be the title race over.
Heather?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, completely. I think Man City have got it in the bag.
OK, right, fair enough. We're going to move on to Mbappe. Kylian Mbappe doesn't feature in any of the papers, but I think we should reference the fact that he has come out, Mark, and said that his time at PSG is over, and it looks almost certain, he hasn't said this yet, that Real Madrid is the destination.
Yeah, I was a bit intrigued by the fact he was wearing a red top when he made the announcement. So maybe he's got a surprise up his sleeve that he's not actually going to Madrid and he's going to Liverpool or Arsenal, but or Man United even. Maybe not. Listen, I think it's the worst kept secret in the game, isn't it? We knew that Mbappe was leaving. We've known for months and months. And if he doesn't go to Real Madrid, I think everybody in the game will be massively surprised. I just think that Real are waiting until they can probably parade the 15th European Cup in a couple of weeks and parade Mbappe at the same time. So I'd be amazed if he doesn't go to Real Madrid. Yeah,
and Heather, if he does end up going to Real Madrid, as Mark says, we all expect that to be the case. Win the Champions League, then get Kylian Mbappe. I mean, what a time to be joining them. And after what happened with Jude Bellingham last year and his unveiling, to then add Kylian Mbappe to that team roster, it's an embarrassment of riches, isn't it?
Yeah, and absolutely massively impressive forward line, isn't it? I mean, Vinicius, Rodrigo, Bellingham there as well, and Mbappe coming in. But, I just want to say, actually, I was so impressed with his speech that he gave, his leaving speech. I mean, politicians could take something from that, surely. It just had everything, didn't it? The fans, thank the people, the staff in the club. I loved the fact that it wasn't just the manager, it wasn't just the owners, it was everyone. He spoke about his inadequacies. He spoke about why he was leaving. He looked at his own ambitions for that, and then he said he would always think about the club and always hold them in his heart, essentially. So I thought it was a really, really nice way to go. And as Mark was saying, it's not a surprise. We've known this since around February time that he was looking at Real Madrid. So he's managed to achieve his ambitions. When it happens, because it's only a matter of when, I'm sure, will be interesting to see. But I'm sure it's not too far away, and they've got another cracking signing there.
Just quickly, in terms of that timing, Mark, do you think before the Euros?
I think before the Euros, yeah, but definitely after the Champions League. I think he'll want it settled before he goes to Germany with France, because a month of uncertainty wouldn't help anybody. So I think, yeah, before the Euros, definitely.
OK, we've got about a minute on our last story, which it involves Novak Djokovic, Heather, injured by a fan's water bottle. This one fairly freakish, this one in the Telegraph. So Djokovic was signing autographs, as they do, after winning a game against Mute, and a fan's water bottle, aluminium water bottle, fell out the backpack, clonked him on the head. Extraordinary.
It is quite an odd one. And when we see flying water bottles in football, don't we? Most of them deliberately thrown. This doesn't seem to have been deliberate. But yeah, he seems to have been taking a bit of treatment there. So not good for Djokovic. And if anything falls at height, obviously it does come down with a bit of strength and power. So I'm sure Djokovic, being the man that he is, will bounce back. No problem at all.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. We have run out of time. Sorry, Mark, I couldn't get you on Novak Djokovic. But to Heather and to Mark, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. And if you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30. And the show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us again on Monday night, when our guests will be Miguel Delaney from The Independent and Charlie Wyatt from The Sun.